And folks, welcome to From the Inside Out podcast. My name's Eric Cups, your host, and joining me today, we have none other than Joe Wayman. Joe is an awesome all-around guy. He hosts a YouTube channel called Joe Played This. He's a huge Double Dare and 90s Nickelodeon fan, curator of all things Three Stooges, and he is joining me live right now here on From the Inside Out. Joe, welcome.
Hey, Eric, thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, and so, before we get started into the interview, I just want to kind of give the listeners a little background on how we actually met. We met through the crazy world of Double Dare. And let me tell you, I know you're a cool guy because you just had all these crazy facts and figures about Double Dare. And as a fan myself, I thought man, this is awesome. This guy knows a ton about Double Dare. But what really sold me in my book on how you're such a stand-up guy is when I was out in California last year and you said, hey, Claudia Wells, the Jennifer Parker from Back to the Future, owns a men's clothing store in Studio City. Go by and check it out. I'm like, what? This is crazy. And for the record, Joe and I have never met in person. So we've been friends for a couple of years now on the internet. So it's pretty cool. I hope to meet you one day, Joe, but you're amazing and welcome. And how are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. And it was heavy, I should say, probably for you to actually go there and see her and whatnot. But I'm doing really well, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and so you're, of course, we know each other through Double Dare and the crazy world that is in and of itself. But we're bringing you on the show today, and you're going to talk about your video game channel, which I thoroughly enjoy myself. It's called Joe Played This, and it's about throwback video games. But ironically, when you first played them, they weren't throwback. So tell me your inspiration for starting your YouTube game review channel.
Sure. Well, I've been a fan of watching different review channels on YouTube for, quite a few years. I started watching things like LGR, which is Lazy Game Reviews, Gaming Historian, Nintendo Life, which isn't really reviews, more of a news thing, but still fun to watch. Just different channels, and I really like what they do, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to try doing my own YouTube show, do it my way, and, see what happens with it. I, of course, wanted to do more of a focus on retro games, which is more of my specialty, but just having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and some of the games you reviewed, didn't you do Contra and Paperboy?
Yeah. So I decided that I wanted to do some more well-known games as well as those that might be a little more obscure. So, which is why Paperboy 2 came in, as well as the Three Stooges game.
Now, why do you said you want to do it on your terms? What makes your channel more unique than other video review channels?
We might go into this later, but I've always wanted to have my own show growing up. What I want to do, I just wanted to inject my own style of humor into these. Whereas, obviously other people who do them, they do their own humor. And, some of those include, a lot of swearing or references to other things. Whereas I wanted to do something that was geared to something that families could watch. Of course, not knocking what other people do, but, that's just something that I'm, trying to focus on doing, and try to have a relatively short episode. As far as maybe I try to do 8 minutes or less just to keep people's attention.
Yeah.
Because I think nowadays you got to keep it moving quickly. Otherwise you're going to lose interest.
Yeah, Joe, and you're absolutely right. That's the key to it, because viewers' attention span is only going to last so long. So yeah, the quicker the better. That's what my wife always says. Oh boy. So you said you moving along here on From the Inside Out podcast. So you said you like to inject your own style of humor. you have some pretty big influences in the humor department. I know, the Three Stooges are your favorite.
Oh yeah, yeah,
What
obviously.
you tell me? We're kind of around the same age, in our early 30s, mid 30s. You
Hmm.
look like you're 12. Your nice cheeks. Oh my gosh, you lucky dog, you. Um, but
Thanks.
what? But being, in your 30s, what's the catch to the Three Stooges for you?
Well, I grew up watching them, so I was exposed to them at a real early age. I mean, Curly, of course, just my favorite, just because he acted so wacky on there. So I just always thought that they were funny, and you watch something enough, you can sort of absorb their humor and just there were things as a kid I didn't really understand, but as an adult, you get them. In fact, another sort of inspiration of my humor is watching Rocky and Bullwinkle. I used to watch reruns of that as a kid, and there's a prime example. A lot of the jokes that they did as a kid, they went over your head, but you still laughed at it. But now as an adult, it's like, this is brilliant. Even though the references are dated, if you do enough research, they make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, totally. And these writers have it dialed in where they have to be on two different levels. One with the child
Right.
and kid in mind, and then of course with the adult to keep them around.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so in our pre-interview, you talked about Curly as being your favorite, and you say they're
Hmm.
the funniest man that ever lived.
Yes.
What's your funniest, top of the mind moment here that you have of watching the Three Stooges?
Oh man, that's hard. I a year ago, I came up with a countdown of what my top 25 favorite Three Stooges episodes are. It took some time to narrow everything down and stuff, but if I had to pick a favorite, that's really hard. Like a favorite moment, because in my opinion, there are so many good ones to choose. I think one of my favorite episodes, actually, my favorite episode that I remember liking first as a kid, called "Violent is the Word for Curly." Basically, I'll give you a very quick run through. They start working out as a gas station, and of course, in their jobs, they were never good. They always had, found somebody to screw it up. So they're working at a gas station. These three professors come in. Curly puts gas in the radiator and instead of water, and then Mo comes over with a match just to see if he put it in there. The car blows up, and so they escape. And next thing you know, the Stooges are professors, or posing as professors, and they can't even answer any questions. And then it's a mess, but it's really funny. I didn't give out spoilers, but it's just, I don't know. They do this song like swing the alphabet because they're teaching college kids, but I don't know. It's just really funny how it all pans out, and I don't know. I've just been exposed to that since a young age, so it just kind of sticks with you.
Yeah, and as I've told you before, like in private messages back and forth when we're talking about your review channel, is that you do a really good job of writing your video game
Thank you.
reviews. And I think it's because of the humor and the influences that you've, been exposed to that translates into something that's entertaining to watch and also in how you craft your message. So for those that have not seen his channel yet, of course I encourage you to do so after the show. Check it out to see what I'm talking about because Joe really has it locked in on the deadpan humor front, and also you have some good subtle jokes in there as well, which of course
Thank you.
stays family friendly. So that's
Right.
hitting all the features you want to hit. Um, and so with your game reviews, it's funny that you mentioned as I'm going through our pre-interview here how everybody knows that back in the day, you either a Nickelodeon kid or a Disney kid.
Hmm.
And there's two distinct differences. Nick kids were more messy, adventurous, blah, blah, blah. Disney kids were kind of like more, down home, white picket fence, nuclear family.
Hmm.
And you said that you were a Nintendo kid instead of a Sega kid. What's the
That's right.
difference?
I didn't grow up with any Sega consoles. For example, a cousin of mine, he had a Nintendo, but later he had a Sega Genesis. which, I played once in a while when I was over there. But, it was always my understanding that, you either were a Nintendo fan or a Sega fan. I mean, I remember this was probably, I think, Christmas 1988, 87 or 88, I don't remember. So I would have been, 6 or 7 years old. Christmas is coming. I want a Nintendo, you know? And, Sega had the Master System. I'm like, I don't think I even knew of it. And which was fine by me, obviously, which seeing how things worked out. But, Christmas is coming. I'm like, I want a Nintendo. We even went to a store to see Santa. He's like, all right, what do you want for Christmas? I'm like, Nintendo. He's like, what's Nintendo? I'm like, are you serious? So obviously Santa sits on the throne of lies. But, yeah, I've always
There's that
loved
humor,
Nintendo.
folks. There is that humor. Santa sits on the throne of lies. I love it. You just throw that in there.
Thank you. I actually almost threw that line in the first episode when I was talking about Super Mario Brothers 2.
Throne of lies. Oh shit, that's awesome. Yeah, and so like back in the '80s, like I think if we maybe dug a little deeper and talked to more people our age and found out that yeah, if you liked Nickelodeon, you were a Nintendo kid. Yeah, and if you like
Mm-hmm.
Disney, you're a Sega kid. And going a little deeper, a little bit more meta, more than I think we need to. I think it also went with familial income too, because Segas were almost, at least in Tampa, twice as much as Nintendo's, and the games were more expensive, and everything was more expensive for Segas. And so like
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo was kind of like the console that everybody really had because that's all that everybody's parents could afford.
Right. And, of course, as a kid, you have no concept of money. And I remember being in elementary school, going to a friend's house who had a Nintendo. And I'm like, you don't have the power pad? And I didn't have it either. I had a couple friends who did have the power pad, but I'm like, you don't have a power pad? He's like, no, we couldn't afford it. And again, as a kid, you have no concept of money and how much things cost. But, you know, looking back, you see ads for Nintendo from that time, the price as an adult, you're like, that's actually really reasonable.
Well, yeah, like yeah, 30 something years of inflation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So let me hop back in my DeLorean and buy 1,000, Nintendos, and
Wait, and while you're at it, give me the Great Sports Almanac too, would you?
yeah, I'll get it from Biff. um, and so, like, you play these, classic games as a kid, and now you play them as an adult. What has changed in that time from turning the console on? For you specifically, what's kind of changed? Has there been any change in how you process the game or how you go about playing it? What makes playing these retro games different as an adult?
Mhm. Well, I mean, as an adult, especially when it comes to games that you grew up playing, when you play them as an adult, there's no surprise to them anymore about what's going to happen, but there's still that fondness of, hey, I really love playing this. I can play any of the old 8-bit Mario games for the NES, and even though I know the game front and back, I still have so much fun playing it because it's a solid game. Well, they're solid games, I should say, but
You played a bunch of games. You're doing a review channel now. What
mm,
is your favorite game of all time?
that is hard. I would have to say, now this is a very close tie between Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers 3.
Okay. Um,
Uh,
Qualities of both.
man,
Start with
well,
Super Mario.
man,
Of course,
okay,
it's the original. You can't go wrong. It's original. It's great.
right,
It's what everybody knows and holds a candle
right.
to.
Yeah, I mean, I was obsessed with that game as a kid. I I would, come home from school playing that. I would even, sneak out in the living room in the middle of the night, play it.
Yes,
And
me
once
too.
I heard, yeah, and so funny story. A few years later, when I had Super Mario 3, I would do the same thing. But I distinctively remember this. Um, you know, playing it in the middle of the night, I was in like World 5, Skyland, and my parents' room was, at the other end of the house. And I hear as if my dad's getting up. And I'm like, okay, I better go back to my room, otherwise I'm going to get in trouble. So all I did is I shut the TV off. I didn't turn the Nintendo off because, I mean, you couldn't, pick up where you left off, of
Right.
course. So I I shut the TV off, went back to my room, pretended as if I were asleep, and that was that. I don't remember much after that, if I went back out there or something, but I don't know, just like Super Mario Brothers was a really just a fun game, especially to um, come across it when you're a young kid. There's just this giant adventure you're taking on, this colorful, world and all these enemies and power-ups. It sucks you in as a kid.
Right, right. And so when your dad got up and you're playing Super Mario Brothers in the middle of the night, I've been there too. Did it feel like your heart was about to pump out of your chest and like the world was just going to collapse if you got caught?
Yeah.
I was so damn scared. Now, I actually did get caught. And my mom, because I turned the TV off, I turned the Nintendo off, and she actually, like, our rooms were next to each other in our house. And so she came out.
Mhm.
I had run around into the kitchen because it was split and then hauled butt back into my room, pulled the covers over me. I knew she heard me and she came in and she's like, Eric, were you up playing video games? No, mom, I'm sleeping. But like back in the day, the TVs would glow a little bit after you turned them off
Mhm.
and have the static. You can hear the
Yep.
static, and so she busted me solid. Did do your parents know that you were playing games in the middle of the night?
I'm sure they did. I mean,
Well, they know now.
you're right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it must have been obvious. I mean, I might have got caught a couple of times. Again, I mean, that's one instance that really sticks out in my mind. But I'm sure that there's other times where I was caught and told to go back to bed, and or told, hey, you can't play Nintendo tomorrow because
Funny enough. So my mom, as I just said, she caught me playing Nintendo. I actually caught her playing a couple times when I'd have to get up in the middle of the night. And
Yeah.
she actually told me one day that she stayed up till like 3:30 in the morning and she got blisters on her thumbs from playing
Yeah.
Mario Brothers. And here's my mom, in the 80s, and like it was like that's pretty awesome. I'm like, go mom,
Right.
you get it now. uh,
Right.
so like okay, Super Mario is, and Super Mario 3 is your, close games. What makes
Mhm.
Super Mario 3 stand out for you?
Oh my gosh, it is just, it takes what they did in the first game and just totally expanded it. I mean, 8 different worlds, all these really cool power ups. To this day, I'm like, which one is still my favorite? It's probably the Tanuki suit, obviously. I mean, come on. I mean, what other power up could let you be a statue for a few seconds and not get hurt by enemies? But I mean, that game could do so much. I mean, it was the first time, they could fly. They could do so much with that game.
Yeah, I was so
It was
pumped
just so
when
much more fun.
yeah, I was so pumped when you
And
could turn into the frog. It's like, oh, the frog and
yeah,
the Tanuki suit as well. But
yeah.
that
I
was like
mean,
the coolest damn
the
thing.
only way. That's the only way to make those, water levels tolerable. The frog suit.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I had and I hate water levels still to this day. And I even had a reputation as a kid for really being into Mario. I mean, I dressed up as Mario for Halloween at school, and I remember being, I don't know what year this was, maybe fourth or fifth grade, maybe something like that. And kids in my class, they asked, "How do you beat Super Mario Brothers 3?" And I actually drew a diagram of you know that battle with Bowser, and explained to them, "Okay, you got to make him break these bricks or blocks or whatever, his platform, and then he's got to fall through there." So it was kind of cool being asked, how do you beat this?
Right. And so the mental challenge, really.
Yeah.
All right, gotcha. And so, Nintendo came out in the early '80s, mid '80s there. Now, with the advent of all these games now, like heaven forbid, like Fortnite and Call of Duty and all that stuff, I know what draws you back to those retro games?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I don't really want to buy any new systems. Um, I've been tempted to buy the Switch, but I'm like, do I really need to get one right now? In fact, I mean, I have a Wii U. That's the latest system that I have. Although I also have the NES Classic and the Super NES Classic, because I mean, they have old games on them, but they're just still so much fun to play. And I just get a lot of enjoyment out of them.
So you have no
Whereas,
desire to look at the more modern games.
right, I mean, my nephew's like Minecraft, and I've tried playing it with him a few times. And I'm like, I just cannot get the hang of this. It's like, what's the point? What am I doing? So, there goes that. But get off my lawn. But but I don't know. When you grow up with something and you enjoy it, you can still enjoy it as an adult. And I don't know, they're just still. I still get a kick out of playing them, and seeing if I can do better than I originally did, or just fun to revisit them. Or maybe playing a game that I liked as a kid and see if it still holds up. Sometimes they don't, but they're still so much fun to me.
Gotcha. And since you enjoy playing these video games so much, it really makes a great for great content when you do your reviews. Excuse me.
Hmm.
So what doing retro reviews? What kind of you're putting yourself out there on YouTube? Doesn't that
Hmm.
make you nervous a little bit? How do social media is a crazy place.
Yeah.
So what's kind of been the response you've had?
Amazingly, the response has been just really fantastic and positive. People like yourself have been really encouraging about it and saying all sorts of nice things. And, it's definitely a great motivator to keep going. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this how I want to do it. So, you know what? Let's just keep churning them out.
Gotcha. And like we talked about earlier, your humor and your delivery style and your sheer knowledge of the game, especially you wrap that all together with a short time commitment on the video, and I think you got a
Hmm.
winning combination. Um, so unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it. I don't play video games except for retro video games or playing on the Wii with my kids, and so being able to go back and watch your videos and see, oh yeah, that's how that was supposed to happen, or oh, that's what that game looked like. Because going back to Double Dare, I always wanted the Double Dare NES game, but I never got it. So it was awesome to be able to see you review that and beat it, so I didn't have to.
Right.
I had
Well,
to wait 30 years, but here it is.
yeah. Well, I do have a physical copy of that, and one thing that I like to do with the reviews is, if when possible, I want to include like some type of tip that might be helpful for when playing it. I did point out in the Devil Dare game that the controls in the obstacle course are terrible, which is why I haven't been able to beat it. In fact, I did that episode because, in April when they announced that they were bringing this show back, I'm like, okay, why the heck not? Let's do this one. So consider it. I even wrote in the description, consider it free publicity, and 200 people have seen it, or one, I don't know, but I don't know how many people have seen it off the top of my head, but who cares? I'm not doing it for the views.
You say you've admired different people who have their own retro game channels. Um,
Hmm.
what do you admire about other channels that you're incorporating into yours?
What I like about them is just the quality of um, content they put together. For example, Gaming Historian is really good because, well, the guy's name is Norm. He does these really good historical looks at different games and consoles and things like that. He did a really good hour-long episode not too long ago about Tetris, that game is addicting and I love playing it. It's just really fascinating how he brought out all the facts with that and a lot of stuff I didn't know. LGR is pretty entertaining, just with how he reviews things and just his mannerisms. He's, pretty laid back. I don't know. I really like watching these channels where they discuss these games and explain things that maybe I didn't know before, or give a more in-depth look at, and also, try to include some humor. If it's just if there's no humor, then I won't get too much more enjoyment out of it.
And speaking of humor, as we're Facebook friends and I see you on your posts every Sunday, you play the drums in your spare time. And
Yeah.
I'll admit to it now, I always look on Sunday to see you comment on how your sticks are going to fly out of your hands or your drop drumsticks or something like that. And I thought, you know what, that's pretty funny. And so I look
Right.
every Sunday morning when I get off of work, as I scroll through Facebook, I'm like, oh yeah, did Joe drop his sticks yet?
All right. Yeah, I always appreciate having self-deprecating humor. So it's always good to make fun of yourself. And, now I didn't drop any yesterday, so amazingly, but I actually bought some grip tape to put on like the bottom half of the sticks. Sometimes they work, other times they don't, but it's always funny to get a reaction out of it. Now,
Yes.
but when it does happen, I have like a stick bag on the floor tom. So when I do lose one, I'm able to pull up another one and not lose time. So
Yeah, that's important because the drums are, of course, keeping the pace of the performance. So,
right.
I just think it's so funny, and how you take it with such grace is awesome. Um, so, what is anything else you want to put out there for people to know about your review channel?
Well, it's just something really fun I enjoy doing. If you go to YouTube, you can search for Joe Played This. Now, I could have youtube.com/Joe Played This, but per their rules on there, you need to have at least 200 subscribers. I'm not anywhere near that, but again, I'm not doing this for the subscribers or views or what have you. I'm just doing this because I'm having so much fun with it. But, and also I'm going to be having new episodes coming up this spring. The last one I did was in November. Winter kills a lot of my motivation. So it's also giving me time to think of what games I want to do. So I've got a few planned out already. And so yeah, this spring I'll start, doing some new ones. But it's just a lot of fun to do that. And, if your listeners like that sort of thing, then hey, I'd love for them to check it out.
I was going to say, yes, Joe, they should absolutely check it out. They can find you online on Facebook and YouTube at Joe Played This. And what I also like is you offer sometimes the ability to vote on which game you're going to review.
Yeah, and so that usually comes from either I have no idea what I want to do that month, or, just seeing if there's one game that, people would like to watch over the other. And usually what happens is the game that doesn't win, I'll do it, a few months later sometimes. So, I want to at least have some type of interaction going on there.
And if you want to connect with Joe on his Facebook or YouTube channel, just search Joe Played This. If there's a topic you would like me to explore, or have a general comment about the show or content for the show, please reach out to me on social media. I look forward to all of your questions and comments. I'm your host, Eric Cups, and I'm feeding you content as I find it from the inside out.